Today I'm practicing different ways to assist a follower if they need help on a move or they're stuck swinging in space after falling on an overhang or something. We're not going to talk about vector pulls. We're not going to talk about some of the really nuanced things. We're really just going to talk about 3-to-1s, 5-to-1s, 6-to-1s, and how to know what type of haul system you have set up. I'm going to set up a 3-to-1. So the first thing I like to do is tie a catastrophe knot so I can go hands free on my ABD. We want to make sure that we're not putting more than a few feet in the system. That lets me let go. And we're going to set up a really simple 3-to-1. One of the pro tips that I've found when setting these things up is that people tend to try to tie it down where they're going to need it. But the nice thing about a friction hitch is that you can move it once you tie it to where you need it. I really like to tie an auto block here. Make sure it pulls in both directions. I can slide it down. Then what I can do is attach my brake strand to it. Keeping my hand on the brake, I can take out any kind of knots or things that I have, slide it down out of the way, and I can begin hauling with a little bit of assistance like this. The number one rule is that we want to make sure that we're managing any slack in the system and keeping our hand on the brake at all times if we don't have some sort of way to go hands-free. It's really hard to pull up here, so I really like to slide it down as far as I can reach, and then I can pull up on the climber. The way that we know it's a 3-to-1 is if we think of the forces that we're pulling. I personally pull with a force of 1 Carter, that's my name. So we know that that goes down, it turns around in this carabiner, it goes up, it turns around in the gree-gree, and it goes down. People get really confused about how to count these forces. It's not that it's 1, 2, 3. It's actually that it's 1, 1, 1. So in some ways, I could just be pulling here with a force of 1. Where the addition comes in is at this point that's attached to the hollow block, to the friction hitch right here, this turnaround on that side is an addition. So it's 1 plus 1 is 2, and that connects to the 1 that zips through the gree-gree and goes to the end. So this is pulling with a force of 3-to-1. All right, here's where things can get confusing. Sometimes, if I have someone hanging over the edge and they really can't reach the rock, or I'm pulling a really heavy haul bag or something, I may need something that's a little bit stronger than a 3-to-1. You can do that a few ways. You could stack forces that you're pulling through. You could have 2 people pull on this, and then you have 2 people pulling on a 3-to-1. You can make the system more efficient. You could use something like a mini traction up here, assuming you don't need to lower with it, and that might be more efficient than a gree-gree. I could also put a pulley anywhere that it turns around that doesn't need to be a progress capture. So if I put a pulley here on this first turnaround, I would have where the 1 and 1 stack. That might be more efficient and I'd be losing less force through that. Other things I can do is stack forces. I can make it a more complicated haul system. One of my favorite ways to do this is if a 3-to-1 isn't working, rather than breaking everything down, I may actually just make something that's a little bit more complicated off of the 3-to-1 rather than starting over. Just for the sake of clarity, so that you can see what's happening, the way that I'm gonna do this is I'm gonna only use friction hitches so that things are a little bit cleaner, and then anytime I bring in an additional force, it may be in a different color. So to make a 3-to-1 more powerful, I can essentially double it. One of the ways I like to do this is to add another friction hitch to this brake side. Now that I have another friction hitch on this side, I can stack an additional force. One way to do this might be to use a cordelette or the backside of your clove or some sort of fixed point off of the back of your anchor. I'm gonna take it, clip it to my anchor so I have a fixed point. Attach that, and now I can pull here with additional force. Let's count it. So I'm pulling on this cordelette with a force of 1 Carter. It goes down, turns around, and dead ends up there. So we don't have anything to worry about up there. 1 plus 1, where these turn around, is 2. 2 plus 2, where this turns around, is 4. And this is 2. It zigzags around and remains 2. Adds up right here. 2 plus 4 is 6. So by adding a 2-to-1 haul to my 3-to-1 haul, I now have a 6-to-1 haul. It looks kind of like this. Pull, 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 and then I can slide this one, and then I can keep pulling, slide this one. When this thing gets too close, I can slide it a little bit further away. One thing to note is the more forces you have stacked, the more rope you have to pull. So if I have a 3-to-1 set up, for every 1 foot I move the climber, I have to pull 3 feet through the system. For a 6-to-1 to move the climber 1 foot, I have to pull them 6 feet. It's not just forces, it's also the distances multiplied. We're gonna break it down and set up a 5-to-1. If I'm belaying a climber and I know that I need something more than a 3-to-1, or I know that a 3-to-1 is probably not gonna work, but I don't really feel like setting up that whole system to make a 6-to-1, I can make a 5-to-1 system. I take my fixed point, I clip it down here on the load strand. This is a 2-to-1. This might work in some situations. However, as you pull, you also have to tend with your brake side. It's not gonna automatically capture. Now, I can tie a knot here, or something that I find is really simple, I can tie a hitch, such as a clove hitch, so that it's adjustable. So now I have a clove hitch down attached here. Then I can take my brake strand, clip it here, and let's count it. I pull with the force of 1, it turns around, goes through, dead ends. So there's a force of 1 already on this red. This multiplies in this turnaround and becomes a 2, goes through, stays 2, dead ends. So I pull with 1, it zigzags through, 2 plus 2 is 4, plus the 1 right here is 5. So this is a 5-to-1 haul system. For every 5 feet that I pull through, the climber moves 1 foot, minus friction and rope stretch and everything. We could simply say that for 5 pounds of force, I'm getting 25 pounds of force on the climber. Again, these things are not actually that efficient, so it's maybe not quite that good. The nice thing about a 5-to-1 is as I'm pulling and hauling, I only have one thing to tend. I slide it down, pull, pull, pull. I can slide it down. So as I pull the haul system, I only have one thing to worry about when I'm tending it. All right, so I pull with a force of 1. It turns around here, it goes up, it goes through the gree-gree, and it comes back down. So I pull here with a force of 1, 1 plus 1 is 2, it zigzags down. There's already 1 here because it went all the way around. So 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 1 is 3. Here's a 6-to-1. I pull on this, turns around here, goes up, and dead ends at the anchor. So I pull with 1, it turns around, 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 in addition to the 3-to-1, 2, 2, there's 2 there, 2 plus 2 is 4, 4 plus 2 is 6, but I don't have 6 fingers with 1 hand. I pull with 1 here, it goes around, it goes up through the gree-gree, turns around, so there's already 1 on the red. 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 2 is 4, 4 plus the 1 over here is 5. So if I pull here, it turns into a 5 down there. The thing about a lot of these haul systems is they're really not efficient. So if you need something that's more efficient, there are devices and ways to do this. This also doesn't replace any professional instruction or anything. I'm not even a rock climbing guide anymore. I'm really practicing the skills for my own knowledge and abilities and everything. So don't just watch this video and assume you know everything. I'm just a nerd who's doing nerd stuff in the woods.